The Great Hall of the Velaran Palace was the most beautiful place in the known galaxy. Crystal pillars rose from the floor like frozen waterfalls. Light from 3 suns poured through windows made of pure diamond. 10,000 guests filled the seats, their bodies covered in silk and gold and jewels from 100 different worlds. Queen Nova sat on her throne and watched everything with tired eyes. She had planned this day for 20 years. She had sent invitations to every powerful family in 12 star systems. She had promised land, wealth, and political power to whoever would take her daughter's hand in marriage. But now, as the ceremony reached its final moment, she felt only fear. Princess Lyra stood alone on the ceremonial platform. She wore a dress of white silver that matched her strange, pale blood. Her skin was the color of moonlight. Her eyes were large and dark, like 2 pools of deep water. She was beautiful in a way that made other species uncomfortable. She was too still, too quiet, too aware of everything around her. This was the problem. This had always been the problem. Lyra was an empath. She could feel the emotions of every living being near her. When someone felt joy, she felt their joy. When someone felt hate, their hate burned inside her chest. She had no protection from the feelings of others. Every whisper of disgust, every flash of fear, every moment of rejection, she felt them all as if they were her own. And right now, standing before 10,000 guests, she felt their judgment like knives in her skin. The first suitor had withdrawn that morning. He was a prince from the Keth Empire, a species of tall, blue-skinned warriors. He had looked at Lyra with cold eyes and said that his people did not marry broken things. His words had cut deep, but Lyra had not cried. She had learned long ago that crying only made others more uncomfortable. The second suitor withdrew an hour later. Then the third. Then the fourth. One by one, they all found excuses. Her blood was the wrong color. Her abilities were unnatural. Their families would not approve. Their gods would not bless such a union. The truth was simpler and crueler. They were afraid of her. Now only one suitor remained. Prince Kael of the Morath Federation stood at the edge of the platform. He was handsome in the way that powerful men often are tall, strong, with golden skin and eyes like polished copper. He was also the most important political ally Queen Nova could hope for. If he accepted Lyra, the Valoran Empire would be safe for generations. Queen Nova leaned forward on her throne. Her hands gripped the armrests so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Please, she thought. Please, let him say yes. Prince Kael walked slowly toward Lyra. The crowd fell silent. Every eye watched him move across the platform. Lyra stood perfectly still, her hands folded in front of her, her face calm and empty. But inside, she was screaming. She could feel Kael's emotions as clearly as she could feel her own heartbeat. There was no love there. There was no kindness or warmth or even simple respect. There was only disgust, carefully hidden behind a mask of politeness. He stopped 3 steps away from her. That distance was deliberate. It was an insult. I have thought carefully about this union, Kael said. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. I have consulted with my advisors, my priests, and my family. Queen Nova held her breath. And I must refuse. The word hit Lyra like a physical blow. She did not move. She did not speak. But somewhere deep inside her, something cracked. The princess carries silver blood, Kael continued. He was not speaking to Lyra. He was speaking to the crowd. According to ancient Valoran texts, this marks her as hollow-souled, empty, a vessel with nothing inside. Murmurs spread through the hall. Some guests nodded in agreement. Others looked away in embarrassment. Furthermore, Kael said, her empathic abilities are not a gift. They are a curse. She feeds on the emotions of others like a parasite. I will not bond myself to someone who will drain my very feelings from my body. He turned and walked away without looking back. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Lyra stood alone on the platform, surrounded by 10,000 people who would not meet her eyes. She felt their relief, their satisfaction, their quiet agreement with everything Kael had said. She was used to rejection. She had faced it her entire life. But this was different. This was public. This was permanent. After today, no one in the galaxy would ever consider her worthy of love. Queen Nova rose from her throne. Her face was pale with shock and anger. "Is there no one else?" she called out. Her voice echoed through the hall. "Is there no suitor brave enough to stand with my daughter?" Silence answered her. "Please," the queen said. The word broke something in the room. Queens did not beg. Queens did not show weakness. But Nova was also a mother, and her child was hurting. Someone, anyone, in the far corner of the hall, in the smallest and least important section of seats, the human delegation sat quietly. There were only 5 of them. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were still considered primitives by most galactic standards, clever primitives perhaps, but primitives nonetheless. Tae-woo sat in the second row. He was 32 years old, with black hair and serious eyes and the kind of face that people often forgot. He was not a prince or a warrior or a man of great importance. He was a xenobiologist and a junior diplomat, sent to observe and learn, not to participate. But as he watched Princess Lyra stand alone on that platform, he felt something twist in his chest. He knew that look. He had seen it before, years ago, on his sister's face. Mina had been born with a genetic illness that made her different from other children. The doctors had called her defective. The other kids had called her worse things. She had spent her childhood being told that something was wrong with her, that she was broken, that no one would ever want her. Tae-woo had spent his whole life proving those people wrong. Now he watched an alien princess face the same cruelty from an entire galaxy, and something inside him refused to stay silent. "Sir," Captain Hyun whispered beside him, "whatever you are thinking, stop thinking it." Tae-woo stood up. "Sir," Hyun said more urgently, "this is not our place. We are observers. We do not have the authority to." But Tae-woo was already walking. He moved down the aisle between the seats. He walked past the nobles from a dozen different worlds. He walked past the guards and the priests and the advisors. He walked until he reached the ceremonial platform, and then he climbed the steps and stood before Princess Lyra. She looked at him with those dark, deep eyes. She was trying to read his emotions, he realized. She was trying to understand why this strange human had approached her when everyone else had walked away. But she could not read him. Human minds were different somehow. His feelings were hidden from her, wrapped in layers of complexity that her abilities could not pierce. For the first time in her life, Lyra looked at someone and felt only silence. Tae-woo bowed in the Velaran style he had studied their customs for years. Then he held out his hand. "My name is Park Tae-woo," he said quietly, "and if you will have me, I would be honored to stand beside you." The hall erupted into chaos. The noise was deafening. 10,000 voices rose at once, filling the crystal hall with shock and anger and disbelief. Some people laughed. Others shouted insults. A few simply stared with their mouths open, unable to understand what they were seeing. A human, a primitive, short-lived, unremarkable human had just offered himself to the Velaran princess. Captain Hyun dropped his face into his hands. This was a disaster. This was the end of his career. He had brought Tae-woo to this ceremony as a learning experience, and now the foolish young man had just created a diplomatic incident that would take decades to repair. But on the platform, Tae-woo did not move. He stood with his hand extended, his eyes fixed on the princess, his face calm and patient. He ignored the laughter. He ignored the insults. He had made his choice, and he would not take it back. Lyra stared at him. She had lived for over 200 years, but she had never seen anything like this. No one had ever looked at her without some form of judgment in their hearts. No one had ever approached her without wanting something: power, or alliance, or simply the status that came from being near royalty. But this human wanted nothing. At least, nothing she could sense. His mind was a mystery to her, wrapped in emotions so complex and layered that they created a kind of beautiful static. Standing near him felt like standing in a quiet room after a lifetime of screaming crowds. It felt like peace. Queen Nova rose from her throne. Her mind was racing. She had not expected this. She had not prepared for this. A human suitor was unthinkable. Humans lived less than 100 years. They had no political power, no great wealth, no ancient bloodlines. A marriage between Lyra and this man would bring the Valoran Empire nothing, but it would also save her daughter from complete disgrace. "Silence," Nova commanded. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. The crowd obeyed, though unhappy murmurs still rippled through the seats. The man has made a formal offer. According to our laws, I must respond. Prince Kale stepped forward. His face was red with anger. You cannot seriously consider this, he said. He is a human, a nobody. His species barely learned to leave their own planet. This is an insult to the ceremony, to your bloodline, and to every respectable family in the galaxy. Nova turned to look at him with cold eyes. You had your chance, Prince Kale. You chose to walk away. You do not get to decide what happens next. Kale's mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. He was not used to being dismissed. He was not used to being told no. But the queen had spoken, and even he did not have the power to challenge her in her own hall. Nova looked at Taewoo. She studied him carefully, his simple clothes, his ordinary face, his steady hand still extended toward her daughter. Human, she said. Do you understand what you are doing? Yes, Your Majesty. Taewoo replied. His voice was quiet but clear. Do you understand that if I accept your offer, you will be bound to my daughter by laws older than your entire civilization? That you will be expected to complete the trial of worth? That failure could mean your death? I understand. And you still wish to proceed? Taewoo finally looked away from Lyra. He met the queen's eyes directly, which surprised her. Most beings could not hold her gaze for more than a few seconds. Your Majesty, he said, I watched 12 suitors reject your daughter today. I watched them call her broken, cursed, and hollow. I watched them walk away from her like she was something to be ashamed of. He paused. The hall was completely silent now. Even the most arrogant nobles were listening. I have studied your people for many years, Taewoo continued. I know your history, your customs, and your biology. I know that the silver blood your daughter carries is rare, but it is not a curse. I know that her empathic abilities make her one of the most sensitive and aware beings in the galaxy. I know that the superstitions against her are based on lies told by people who feared what they did not understand. Queen Nova's eyes widened slightly. She had not expected this. She had expected the human to be ignorant, to be making this offer out of foolish impulse or desperate ambition. But he spoke like someone who had truly thought about his words. I am not a prince, Taewoo said. I am not rich or powerful or important. But where I come from, we have a belief. We believe that worth is not something you are born with. Worth is something you prove through your actions, through your choices, through the way you treat others. He looked at Lyra again. I believe your daughter has worth beyond measure, and I would be honored to spend my life showing the galaxy that truth. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, Queen Nova smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad and hopeful all at once. Very well, she said. I accept your offer. But you must understand, acceptance is only the beginning. Before any bonding can take place, you must pass the trial of worth. 3 tests that will judge your strength, your wisdom, and your heart. If you fail even one, the offer is void. And if you fail badly enough, you will not survive. Taewoo nodded. I understand. Then it is done. Nova raised her voice so that everyone could hear. Let it be known throughout the galaxy. The human Park Taewoo has offered himself as suitor to Princess Lyra of the Velaran Empire. The trial of worth will begin in 3 days. The crowd erupted again, but this time the noise was different. There was still shock and disbelief, but there was also something else: curiosity, interest, even, perhaps, a tiny spark of respect. As the ceremony officially ended and guests began to leave, Lyra finally spoke. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. Why did you do this? Taewoo looked at her. Up close, she was even more striking than she had seen from across the hall. Her silver blood made her skin almost glow in the light of the 3 suns. Her eyes held depths that he could not begin to understand. Because I have seen that look before, he said simply. The look of someone who has been told their whole life that they are wrong, that they are broken, that they do not deserve love. Lyra felt something strange in her chest. It was not pain. It was not sadness. It was something warmer, something she did not have a name for. My sister was born different, Taewoo continued. She was sick in a way that made others afraid of her. People said cruel things. They called her defective. They said she would never find happiness, never find love, never have a normal life. He smiled slightly. She proved them all wrong. She is the happiest person I know. And I spent my whole childhood learning that the people who call others broken are usually the ones who are truly empty inside. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "What if you fail the trials?" "Then I fail," Taewoo said. "But at least I will have tried. At least someone will have stood beside you when it mattered. That is worth more to me than safety." Lyra did not know how to respond to that. No one had ever spoken to her this way before. No one had ever offered her anything without expecting something in return. "You are strange," she finally said. "Your people are strange." Taewoo laughed. It was a warm sound, genuine and unforced. "Yes," he agreed. "We are. But maybe that is not such a bad thing." As they stood together on the platform, surrounded by the fading light of the three suns, Lyra realized something that surprised her. For the first time in 200 years, she did not want someone to go away. She wanted him to stay. And that small feeling, that tiny spark of hope, was the most terrifying thing she had ever experienced. Because hope, she had learned long ago, was the first step toward pain. But as she looked at the human beside her, she found that she did not care about the risk. Some things, perhaps, were worth being afraid of. The 3 days passed too quickly. Taewoo spent every hour preparing, reading old texts, studying fighting techniques, and learning everything he could about the trial of worth. Captain Hyun had officially washed his hands of the situation, but he still brought food to Taewoo's room and made sure he slept at least a few hours each night. "You are going to die," Hyun said on the morning of the first trial. His voice was flat, like he was stating a simple fact. "The Valorans are twice your size. They're warriors trained from childhood. You have no chance in combat." Taewoo finished tying his boots and stood up. "Probably not," he agreed. "Then why are you doing this?" Taewoo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because when I was 12 years old, my sister asked me why everyone was so afraid of her. She was crying. She had never done anything wrong to anyone, but the other children ran away from her like she was a monster." He looked at Hyun. "I promised her that day that I would spend my life proving people wrong. I would show the world that being different is not the same as being broken." "That is a noble goal," Hyun said slowly. "But the princess is not your sister. She is an alien, a stranger." "Pain is pain," Taewoo replied. "Loneliness is loneliness. It does not matter if the person suffering has human blood or silver blood. When someone needs help, you help them. That is what my father taught me. That is what I believe." Hyun sighed heavily. He had known Taewoo for 5 years, and he had never been able to change the young man's mind about anything. "Fine," he said. "Go and die then. But try not to embarrass humanity too badly in the process." Taewoo smiled. "I will do my best." The arena was massive. It had been carved from a single piece of black stone thousands of years ago, and it could hold 50,000 spectators. Today, every seat was filled. Word of the human suitor had spread across the galaxy, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. Most of them expected to watch him die. Taewoo walked into the center of the arena. The sand beneath his feet was hot from the 3 suns overhead. The crowd roared when they saw him, some cheering, most jeering. He ignored them all. He had learned long ago that other people's opinions could not hurt him unless he let them. His opponent was already waiting. The Valoran champion was named Drath, and he was the most famous warrior in the Empire. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, with muscles like twisted cables and skin the color of dark bronze. His eyes were yellow and cold, like the eyes of a predator watching prey. "Little human," Drath said. His voice was deep enough to shake the ground. "I will try to make this quick. I do not enjoy causing pain to helpless creatures." Taewoo bowed respectfully. "Thank you for your kindness," he said. "But I should warn you, I am very difficult to kill." Drath laughed. The sound was like thunder. "We shall see." The judge raised his hand. The crowd fell silent. Then the hand dropped, and the fight began. Drath moved faster than Taewoo expected. One moment he was standing 3 meters away, and the next moment his fist was flying toward Tae-woo's head. Tae-woo barely managed to dodge, rolling to the side and coming up in a defensive stance. The next few minutes were brutal. Droth hit Tae-woo again and again. Each blow felt like being struck by a falling tree. Tae-woo was knocked down, picked up, thrown across the arena, and knocked down again. Blood poured from cuts on his face and arms. His ribs cracked. His vision blurred. But every time he fell, he stood back up. The crowd began to notice. At first, they had cheered for Droth, expecting a quick victory. But as the fight continued, as the human refused to stay down, a strange silence spread through the arena. People leaned forward in their seats. They stopped talking to each other. They simply watched. Droth hit Tae-woo with a blow that should have ended the fight. The human flew backward and crashed into the arena wall. He lay still for a long moment. The judge began to raise his hand to signal the end of the match. Then Tae-woo moved. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself to his feet. His legs shook. His breath came in short, wet gasps. One of his eyes was swollen shut. But he raised his fists and faced Droth again. "Why do you not stay down?" Droth asked. There was confusion in his voice now, and something that might have been respect. "You cannot win. You must know this." Tae-woo spat blood onto the sand. "I am not trying to win," he said. "I am trying to not give up. There is a difference." Droth stared at him. In all his years of fighting, he had never faced an opponent like this. Valorans fought for victory. They fought for glory and honor and the pride of their families. But this human was not fighting for any of those things. He was fighting simply to prove that he could endure. It was terrifying. And it was beautiful. The fight continued for another 10 minutes. Tae-woo was knocked down 17 more times. Each time, he stood back up. Finally, the judges stopped the match. By Valoran standards, Droth had won. He had caused far more damage than he had received. But no one in the arena felt like they had witnessed a defeat. They had witnessed something else entirely. They had witnessed the stubborn, impossible, irrational refusal of a human being to accept failure. In the royal viewing box, Princess Lyra watched with tears in her eyes. She could not feel Tae-woo's emotions, but she did not need empathic abilities to understand what she was seeing. This man had just been beaten nearly to death for her, not because he thought he could win, not because he wanted power or glory, but simply because he had made a promise and he would not break it. Queen Nova sat beside her daughter. Her face showed nothing, but her hands were trembling slightly. "Interesting," she murmured. "Very interesting." The second trial was held that evening, after Tae-woo's wounds were treated. It was a test of wisdom, an ancient Valoran puzzle with no correct answer. The judges presented him with a simple question. What would you sacrifice for power? Tae-woo sat alone in a small room with the judges watching. He thought about the question for a long time. He thought about his life, his choices, his beliefs. He thought about his sister and his parents and everyone who had ever told him that some things mattered more than success. Finally, he spoke. "I would not sacrifice anything for power," he said. The judges frowned. "That is not an answer," one of them said. "Everyone sacrifices something for power. That is how the universe works." "Then I do not belong in your universe," Tae-woo replied simply. "But I can tell you this. For the people I love, I would sacrifice power itself. I would give up everything, wealth, status, glory, even my life to protect the people who matter to me. Power is only useful if it serves something greater than itself. And there is nothing greater than the bonds we form with each other." The judges were silent. In 2,000 years of administering this test, no one had ever given that answer. They did not know what to do with it. In the end, they passed him. Not because his answer was correct, there was no correct answer, but because his answer was true. They could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice. He believed every word he said. And sometimes, the judges realized, truth was more valuable than wisdom. When the results were announced, the crowd did not know how to react. This human had failed the combat trial by traditional standards, and yet he had somehow passed. He had given an impossible answer to an impossible question, and yet the judges had accepted it. Nothing about this made sense. But perhaps, some of them began to think, That was exactly the point. Perhaps the humans understood something that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. The third trial was different from the first two. There was no arena, no crowd, no judges watching with cold eyes. There was only a small room in the heart of the palace, lit by soft blue light from crystals growing in the walls. There was only Tae-woo, still bandaged and bruised from the combat trial, sitting on a simple chair, and there was only Lyra, standing before him with fear in her heart. This was the trial of heart. It was the most important test, and the most dangerous. Lyra herself would be the judge. She would use her empathic abilities to look into Tae-woo's soul and determine if his intentions were pure. If she found darkness there, greed, cruelty, deception, the bonding would be canceled. If she found light, they would be free to proceed. But for Lyra, the danger was personal. Every time she used her abilities on someone, she experienced their emotions as if they were her own. If Tae-woo's heart contained pain, she would feel that pain. If it contained hate, she would feel that hate. She had looked into the hearts of many beings over her long life, and she had found terrible things. Memories she could not forget, feelings she could not escape. She was afraid of what she might find inside this human. "Are you ready?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. Tae-woo looked up at her. His face was calm, patient, almost gentle. "Yes," he said. "But before you begin, I want you to know something." "What is it?" "I am not perfect," Tae-woo said quietly. "I have made mistakes in my life. I have felt anger and jealousy and fear. I have had dark thoughts and selfish moments. If you look into my heart, you will find all of those things." He paused. "But you will also find the truth of who I am trying to be, and I hope that will be enough." Lyra nodded slowly. She appreciated his honesty. Most beings tried to hide their flaws, to pretend they were better than they really were. But this human was different. He was showing her his imperfections freely, without shame. She stepped forward and placed her hands on either side of his head. His skin was warm beneath her fingers. She closed her eyes and let her mind reach out toward his. For a moment, there was nothing. The static that surrounded human minds was stronger up close, like a wall of complex noise. She pushed harder, searching for a way through. Then, suddenly, the wall cracked open, and she fell into the ocean of his soul. She saw everything. She saw a young boy sitting beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of a sick little girl. The girl was crying because the other children at school had called her a monster. The boy, Tae-woo, so young and small, was promising her that he would never let anyone hurt her again. He was promising that he would spend his whole life proving that being different did not mean being broken. She saw him growing up, studying biology and medicine with desperate determination. She saw him leaving Earth for the first time, traveling to distant worlds in search of knowledge that might help his sister. She saw him failing, again and again, but never giving up. She saw him finally finding a cure on a small planet at the edge of known space, a treatment that no one else had thought to try. She saw him returning home to find Mina healthy and laughing and alive. She saw the tears on his face as he held his sister for the first time in years. She felt his joy, so pure and overwhelming that it made her chest ache. But she also saw his pain. She saw the loneliness of being the only human in rooms full of aliens who looked down on his species. She saw the frustration of watching people judge others based on things they could not control. She saw his anger at injustice, his sadness at cruelty, his fear of failing the people who depended on him. And then she saw herself. She saw the moment Tae-woo first noticed her, standing alone on the ceremonial platform while the galaxy rejected her. She felt what he had felt in that moment, not pity, not disgust, not even simple curiosity. She felt recognition. He had looked at her and seen someone he understood, someone whose pain matched his own, someone who deserved better than what the universe had given her. She felt his decision to stand up, his refusal to stay silent, his absolute certainty that helping her was the right thing to do. She felt his complete lack of expectation. He had not hoped for reward, had not dreamed of power or status, had not even thought about what might happen to him. He had simply seen someone in need and chosen to act. And beneath all of that, she felt something else, something warm and quiet and steady, like a fire burning in the darkness. It was not love, not yet, not quite. But it was the potential for love. The willingness to care for someone, to protect them, to stand beside them no matter what happened. It was hope. Lyra pulled back from his mind. She was crying, she realized. Tears were running down her silver cheeks and falling onto the floor like drops of starlight. She had looked into the hearts of thousands of beings over her 200 years of life. But she had never felt anything like this. Human hearts were not hollow. They were infinite. They contained multitudes, joy and sorrow existing together. Love and fear twisted around each other. Hope growing from the soil of despair. They were messy and complicated and impossibly beautiful. "What did you see?" Tae-woo asked quietly. His eyes were watching her with concern. Lyra wiped her tears away. She took a deep breath and tried to find the right words. "I saw everything," she finally said. "I saw your pain and your fear and your mistakes. I saw the darkness that lives in every heart." Tae-woo nodded. He did not look surprised or ashamed. He simply waited for her to continue. "But I also saw your light," Lyra said. "I saw kindness so deep that it defines who you are. I saw love so strong that it drove you across the stars. I saw courage that does not come from strength, but from the refusal to abandon others." She paused. "I have never seen a heart like yours." "Is that good or bad?" Tae-woo asked with a small smile. Lyra almost laughed. It was such a human thing to say, making a joke when the moment was serious. Finding lightness in the middle of weight. "It is good," she said. "It is very good." She stepped back and raised her voice so that it would carry to the observers waiting outside the room. "The trial of heart is complete," she announced. "The suitor Park Tae-woo has passed. His intentions are pure, his heart is worthy, and I accept him as my bonded partner." The words echoed through the palace. In the great hall, Queen Nova heard them and smiled for the first time in many years. In the corridors, servants stopped their work and whispered to each other in amazement. In the far corners of the galaxy, news feeds picked up the story and spread it across 1,000 worlds. A human had passed the trial of worth. A human would bond with a Velaran princess. The universe would never be the same. But in the small room with the blue crystal light, Lyra and Tae-woo simply looked at each other. There was so much to say, so many feelings to process, so many questions to answer. But for now, in this moment, words did not matter. Lyra reached out and took Tae-woo's hand. His fingers were warm and rough, so different from the smooth skin of her own people. But the touch felt right. It felt like something she had been waiting for her entire life. "Thank you," she whispered. Tae-woo squeezed her hand gently. "You do not need to thank me," he said. "I only did what was right." "That is exactly why I am thanking you," Lyra replied. "Because doing what is right is the hardest thing in the universe, and you make it look easy." She did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if their bonding would work, if they could truly build a life together, if the galaxy would ever accept them. But for the first time in 200 years, she was not afraid to find out, because she was no longer alone. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Lyra's life. According to Valoran tradition, she and Tae-woo were required to spend 30 days together before the final bonding ceremony. It was meant to be a time of learning, a chance for the suitor and the princess to understand each other, to discover if they were truly compatible, to build the foundation of a partnership that would last a lifetime. For Lyra, it was something more. It was freedom. For the first time in her existence, she could simply be near someone without drowning in their emotions. Tae-woo's human mind was like a quiet room in the middle of a screaming storm. When she walked beside him, she could think her own thoughts. When she sat with him, she could feel her own feelings. It was such a simple gift, but to someone who had never experienced peace, it was priceless. They spent their days talking. Tae-woo told her about Earth, its blue oceans and green forests, its billions of humans living in cities of glass and steel, its chaotic history full of war and art and endless reinvention. He told her about his family, his sister Mina, his parents who had taught him that kindness was more important than success. In return, Lyra told him about her life. She told him about growing up different, about being feared by her own people, about the loneliness that had wrapped around her heart like chains of ice. She told him things she had never told anyone, secrets and fears, and hopes that she had kept hidden for centuries. Tae-woo listened to everything. He never judged, never pulled away, never looked at her with the fear she had seen in so many other eyes. He simply listened, and when she was finished, he took her hand and told her that he understood. It was during this time that they discovered the truth about her bloodline. Tae-woo had always been curious about the superstition surrounding Lyra's silver blood. It did not make sense from a biological perspective. The color of someone's blood had nothing to do with their soul or their worth. So he began researching, digging through ancient Valoran archives, reading texts that had not been opened in thousands of years. What he found changed everything. "The silver blood is not a curse," he told Lyra one evening. They were sitting in her private garden, surrounded by flowers that glowed with soft inner light. "It is the opposite." According to these documents, the silver-blooded empaths were the original royal family of Valora. They ruled for 10,000 years, using their abilities to understand their people, to feel their needs, to govern with compassion and wisdom. Lyra's eyes widened. What happened to them? Tae-woo's face grew serious. There was a war. A rival house called the Golden Flame rose against them. They could not defeat the silver-blooded rulers in direct combat, so they used a different weapon. Lies. They spread rumors that the empaths were parasites, that they drained the emotions of others, that their silver blood was the mark of a hollow soul. "The superstition," Lyra whispered. "They created it." "Yes." And when enough people believed the lies, the Golden Flame attacked. They killed most of the silver-blooded line and took the throne for themselves. The few survivors were allowed to live, but they were treated as outcasts, as broken remnants of a cursed bloodline. Tae-woo reached out and touched Lyra's cheek gently. "Your family is not cursed, Lyra. Your family is the true royalty. The throne was stolen from them." Lyra felt the world shift beneath her feet. Everything she had believed about herself, everything she had been told her whole life, it was all built on lies. She was not broken. She was not hollow. She was the heir to a power greater than anything the current royal house possessed. But before she could process this revelation, guards burst into the garden. "Princess Lyra," the captain shouted, "you must come immediately. There has been an attack." They ran through the palace corridors, past frightened servants and confused nobles. The attack had happened in the diplomatic wing in the rooms where the human delegation was staying. When they arrived, Lyra felt her heart stop. Tae-woo was lying on the floor of his room. There was blood everywhere, human blood, red as fire against the white marble floors. His chest was barely rising and falling. His eyes were closed. A servant stood nearby, holding a knife. He was screaming that he had acted for the honor of the empire, that he would not allow a human to pollute the royal bloodline, that Prince Kael had promised him wealth beyond imagination. Lyra did not remember crossing the room. She did not remember striking the servant, sending him flying into the wall with strength she did not know she possessed. She only remembered falling to her knees beside Tae-woo, pressing her hands against his wounds, begging him to stay with her. "Please," she whispered. Her tears fell onto his face, silver drops mixing with red blood. "Please do not leave me. I just found you. I cannot lose you now." Tae-woo's eyes opened slowly. They were clouded with pain, but they found her face and focused on her. "Lyra," he managed to say. His voice was weak, barely a breath. "Are you okay?" She almost laughed through her tears. He was dying on the floor, and he was asking if she was okay. It was such a human thing to do. It was such a Tae-woo thing to do. "I am fine," she said. "Save your strength. The healers are coming." "Good," he coughed, and more blood spilled from his lips. "I was worried about you." "Do not worry about me. Worry about yourself." Tae-woo smiled weakly. "I have never been good at that." The healers arrived and took over. They carried Tae-woo to the medical wing and began working on his wounds. Lyra was not allowed to follow. She was told to wait outside, to let the professionals do their work, to be patient. She could not be patient. She paced the corridor like a caged animal, her mind racing with fear and rage and desperate hope. She barely noticed when Queen Nova arrived and stood beside her. "He will survive," Nova said quietly. "The wounds are serious, but our healers are the best in the galaxy." "He almost died because of me," Lyra replied. Her voice was hollow. Someone tried to kill him because he dared to love me. Yes, Nova's voice was hard. And that someone will pay for their crime. Prince Kale has been arrested. His entire conspiracy is being dismantled as we speak. The documents your human found, they prove everything. The lies, the stolen throne, the centuries of injustice. When this is over, the galaxy will know the truth. Lyra shook her head. I do not care about the truth anymore. I do not care about thrones or power, or ancient bloodlines. I only care about him. Nova was silent for a long moment. Then she said, I know. That is why you deserve each other. Hours later, the healers emerged with good news. Tae-woo would live. The wounds had been deep, but they had repaired the damage in time. He would need weeks to recover, but he would recover. Lyra pushed past the healers and entered the room where Tae-woo lay. He was pale and weak, connected to machines that monitored his heartbeat and helped him breathe, but his eyes were open. And when he saw her, he smiled. I must look terrible, he said. Lyra sat on the edge of his bed and took his hand. You look alive, she said. That is all that matters. I heard what happened. Kale sent that man to kill me. Yes. He wanted to stop our bonding. He was afraid of what would happen if the truth about my bloodline came out. Lyra squeezed his hand. But it does not matter now. He has been arrested. The conspiracy is over. Tae-woo nodded slowly. Then he said something that surprised her. I want to go through with the bonding. What? The ceremony. I still want to bond with you. He looked at her with those steady human eyes. I know it is dangerous. I know there will always be people who hate us, who want to tear us apart, but I do not care. I would rather spend one day as your partner than a lifetime alone. Lyra felt tears building in her eyes again. On Earth, she said. Do you have a saying about flames? Something about burning bright? Tae-woo laughed softly, then winced as the movement hurt his wounds. The flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long, he quoted. But we also say that one moment of real warmth is worth a lifetime in the cold. Lyra leaned down and kissed his forehead gently. Then let us burn together, she whispered. For as long as we have. In that moment, surrounded by healing machines and the scent of medicine, they made their choice. They chose each other. They chose hope over fear, love over safety, connection over isolation, and the universe watched and wondered what would happen next. The news of the assassination attempt spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every news feed, every communication channel, every corner of civilized space was talking about the human who had nearly died for love of an alien princess. The story was too dramatic, too romantic, too impossible to ignore. But the reaction was not what many expected. On Earth, people were angry. Tae-woo was one of their own, a son of Korea, a citizen of the United Earth government, a representative of humanity in the wider galaxy. And someone had tried to murder him in cold blood, simply because he had dared to stand up for what was right. The Earth government held emergency sessions. Politicians argued and debated and shouted at each other. Some wanted to demand justice through diplomatic channels. Others wanted to send a stronger message. In the end, they reached a decision that would change the course of human history. Captain Hyun was in the medical wing, checking on Tae-woo, when his communication device began to buzz. He stepped out into the corridor and answered the call. His face went pale as he listened. When he returned to the room, Lyra noticed immediately. What is wrong? She asked. Hyun cleared his throat. He looked at Tae-woo, then at Lyra, then back at Tae-woo. I have just received orders from Earth, he said slowly. The United Earth government has officially recognized your bonding claim to Princess Lyra. Tae-woo blinked. What does that mean? It means you are no longer acting alone. It means that any attack on you is now considered an attack on humanity itself. Hyun paused. It also means that a fleet is on its way. A fleet? Lyra repeated. 15 ships. Our newest, most advanced vessels. They will arrive in 3 days. Hyun's voice was strange, a mixture of pride and disbelief. Earth has never sent a military force outside our solar system before. This will be the first time. Lyra felt something shift in the room. She had lived for over 200 years. She had watched the politics of the galaxy unfold for generations. She knew what this meant. Humanity was not just defending one man. They were making a statement. They were declaring to the universe that they were no longer content to be observers. They were announcing their arrival as a true galactic power. Why? Taewoo asked quietly. I am just one person. This seems like too much. Hyun smiled slightly. You really do not understand your own people, do you? He said. We do not measure worth by politics or strategy or careful calculation. We measure it by loyalty. You are one of us. Someone tried to hurt you. That is all the reason we need. Over the next 3 days, Taewoo continued to heal. The Valoran medical technology was remarkable, and his wounds closed faster than they would have on Earth. By the time the human fleet arrived, he was able to stand and walk short distances. The fleet's arrival was unlike anything the Valoran system had ever seen. 15 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They were smaller than the massive warships of older species, sleeker and more streamlined. They did not look particularly intimidating compared to the great vessels that the Velarans or the Morath could deploy. But there was something about them that made everyone watching feel uneasy. There was a determination in the way they moved, a precision in their formation, a quiet confidence that suggested they were not afraid of anyone or anything. At the head of the fleet was the flagship, named the Soul. It was commanded by Admiral Kim, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death to be afraid of anything. Admiral Kim requested a meeting with Queen Nova. The Queen agreed immediately. She was curious about these humans who had crossed the stars to protect one of their own. The meeting took place in the Great Hall, the same room where Lyra had been rejected by every suitor in the galaxy. Now the space was filled with a different kind of tension. Queen Nova sat on her throne with Lyra beside her. Admiral Kim stood before them with an honor guard of human soldiers. Your Majesty, Admiral Kim said, bowing respectfully. I bring greetings from the United Earth Government and from all of humanity. We are honored by your presence. Nova replied carefully. Though I admit, we did not expect such a forceful response to recent events. Neither did we, Admiral Kim said. There was no apology in her voice. Humanity has always preferred to stay in the background, to watch and learn, to avoid conflict with older species. But some things cannot be ignored. And what things are those? An attack on one of our citizens. An attack motivated by fear and prejudice. An attempt to stop a union that threatens no one, hurts no one, and represents nothing but love between two beings from different worlds. Admiral Kim's eyes were hard. We have seen such hatred before, Your Majesty. We have a long history of it, and we have learned that the only way to fight hatred is to stand against it. Nova was silent for a moment. Then she said, You speak of love. But surely you must know that this bonding brings your government no political advantage. We have little to offer humanity. Admiral Kim smiled. It was a strange expression, warm and cold at the same time. With respect, Your Majesty, you misunderstand us. We did not send this fleet because we hoped to gain something. We sent it because it was the right thing to do. The Queen studied the Admiral's face for a long moment. She was trying to find the lie, the hidden agenda, the secret motivation that must be driving this display of force. But she could find nothing. The human was telling the truth. I see, Nova said finally. Then we welcome your support. And we thank you for your protection. But Admiral Kim was not finished. There is one more thing, she said. Our historians have been researching Velaran history. We know about the suppressed documents. We know about the stolen throne and the lies about silver blood. And we believe the galaxy should know as well. She made a gesture, and one of her soldiers stepped forward with a data device. We have compiled all the evidence. We are prepared to release it to every news network in the galaxy simultaneously. The truth about Princess Lyra's bloodline will be known by every species in the Galactic Union. Nova's eyes widened. You would do this? For us? For justice, Admiral Kim corrected. And for the universe we want to live in. A universe where lies do not stand. Where stolen power is returned to its rightful owners. Where people like Princess Lyra are valued instead of feared. Lyra felt tears building in her eyes. She had spent her entire life being told that she was worthless. She had spent centuries believing that the galaxy would never accept her. And now, these strange, short-lived humans were offering to change everything. "Why?" she asked. Her voice cracked slightly. "Why do you care so much about us? We are not your people. We are not your responsibility." Admiral Kim turned to look at her. The hardness in her eyes softened slightly. "Because one day, humans will need help," she said. "One day, we will face enemies too powerful for us to defeat alone. And when that day comes, we want the galaxy to remember how we acted when we had the power to choose. We want them to remember that humans stood for justice, even when it cost us nothing to stay silent." She smiled again, and this time the smile was genuine. "Besides," she added, "we have seen what your bonded partner did for you. He walked into an arena and let himself be beaten nearly to death rather than abandon you. He faced assassins and conspirators and the hatred of an entire galaxy. If one ordinary human can do all that for love, then surely the rest of us can send a few ships." The room fell silent. Lyra looked at Taewoo, who had been watching from a balcony overlooking the hall. He smiled at her and gave a small wave. In that moment, Lyra understood something important about humanity. They were not powerful because of their technology or their military or their political influence. They were powerful because they refused to let each other fall alone. They were powerful because they loved fiercely and fought for that love without counting the cost. And maybe, she thought, that was exactly the kind of power the galaxy needed. Queen Nova stood from her throne. "Then let us begin," she said. "Release the documents. Let the truth be known. And let the universe see what happens when humans decide to care about something." The signal went out that same hour. Across 1,000 worlds, the lies of centuries began to crumble. When it came time to choose a location, Taewoo made a simple request. He wanted to show Lyra his home. He wanted her to meet his family, to see the world that had shaped him, to understand where he came from. And Queen Nova, who had learned more about humanity in the past few weeks than in all her previous years combined, agreed without hesitation. So for the first time in galactic history, a Valoran princess traveled to Earth. The ship carrying Lyra descended through the clouds over Korea on a morning in early spring. Lyra watched through the window as the human world revealed itself below mountains covered in green forests, rivers winding through valleys like silver ribbons, cities that sprawled across the land in patterns of concrete and glass. It was different from anything she had ever seen. Valora was a world of crystal and light, beautiful but cold. Earth was messy, chaotic, full of contradictions. Buildings that reached toward the sky stood beside ancient temples. Highways cut through farmland that had been tended for thousands of years. Every square kilometer seemed to contain 1,000 different lives, 1,000 different stories. "It is beautiful," Lyra said softly. Taewoo stood beside her. His wounds had fully healed, and the color had returned to his face. "It is home," he replied simply. The ship landed in a field outside a small town in the countryside. Taewoo's family was waiting there, his parents, his relatives, his childhood friends, and at the front of the crowd, her face bright with excitement, stood Mina. Taewoo's sister was small and thin, with the same serious eyes as her brother. But where Taewoo was calm and steady, Mina was full of energy, bouncing on her feet as she waited for the ship's doors to open. When Lyra finally stepped out into the Earth's sunlight, Mina ran forward without hesitation. "You are even more beautiful than the pictures," Mina exclaimed. She grabbed Lyra's hands and shook them enthusiastically. "I cannot believe you are real. I cannot believe my brother actually did something so brave. He is usually so boring." "Mina," Taewoo said with a sigh, "please do not scare her away. She is not scared." Mina turned to Lyra with wide eyes. "You are not scared, right? You traveled across the galaxy to be with my brother. You must be incredibly brave. Or maybe a little crazy. Probably both." Lyra found herself laughing. It was such an unexpected sound. She had not laughed freely in decades. But there was something about Mina's energy, her complete lack of fear or judgment, that made it impossible to stay serious. "I think I might be a little crazy," Lyra admitted. "Good," Mina declared. "Crazy people are the best. Normal people are boring. That is why I like you already." Taewoo's parents approached next. His father was a quiet man with weathered hands and kind eyes. His mother was small and fierce, With a sharp gaze that seemed to see everything, they bowed to Lyra formally, then surprised her by wrapping her in warm embraces. "Welcome to our family," Taewoo's mother said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "Our son has told us everything about you. We are so happy you are here." Lyra felt something break inside her chest. It was not pain, it was the opposite of pain. It was the feeling of walls crumbling, of ice melting, of chains falling away. For 200 years, she had been treated as something strange and dangerous. And now these humans, these ordinary people from an ordinary town, were welcoming her as if she belonged with them, as if she had always belonged with them. The bonding ceremony was held that evening, in a field outside the town. The humans had built a simple platform decorated with flowers and lights. There were no crystal pillars or diamond windows, no dignitaries from a dozen star systems. There was only family and friends, gathered under the stars of a world that Lyra had never seen before. Valorans and humans stood together in the crowd. Admiral Kim was there, along with Captain Hyun and several members of the delegation. Queen Nova had traveled from Valora to witness the ceremony, wearing simple clothing instead of her royal robes. Mina stood at the front, serving as what the humans called a bridesmaid. As the ceremony began, Lyra looked out at the faces watching her. She reached out with her empathic abilities, something she rarely did anymore because the experience was usually overwhelming. But tonight, surrounded by Taewoo's family and friends, she wanted to know what they were feeling. What she found made her stop breathing. There was no fear. There was no disgust or judgment or cold distance. There was only warmth, a deep, genuine happiness that filled the air like sunlight. These people were glad she was here. They were happy their son, their brother, their friend had found someone to love. They did not care that she was alien, that she had silver blood, that she could feel their emotions. They cared only that she made Taewoo smile. It was the simplest thing in the universe. And it was everything. Taewoo took her hands as they stood before the official who would bond them. He was wearing a traditional Korean suit, black with silver trim, that matched Lyra's dress. His eyes were steady and warm as they looked into hers. "I do not have prepared words," he said quietly. "I am not good at speeches, but I want you to know something." "What is it?" Lyra asked. "I did not expect this," Taewoo said. "When I stood up at that ceremony, I was not thinking about love or marriage or spending my life with someone. I was just thinking that you looked sad, and that no one deserved to be that sad. I was thinking that someone should help you, and that I could be that someone." He squeezed her hands gently. "But then, I got to know you. I learned about your strength, your kindness, your wisdom. I saw how you had survived centuries of loneliness without becoming bitter or cruel. I felt your hope, your courage, your quiet determination to keep going even when everything was against you." His voice became softer. "And somewhere along the way, I stopped helping you because it was right. I started helping you because I could not imagine doing anything else, because being near you felt like coming home, because the thought of a universe without you in it seemed empty and cold and not worth living in." Tears were running down Lyra's face. She did not try to stop them. "Taewoo," she whispered, "I cannot promise you that everything will be easy," he continued. "I cannot promise that we will never face danger or pain or loss, but I can promise you that I will never give up. I will stand beside you for as long as I live, and if my life is short by your standards, then I will make every single day count." He smiled that warm, genuine smile that had first caught her attention in the great hall of the Velaran Palace. "That is my vow to you," he said. "Not as a diplomat or a xenobiologist or a representative of humanity, just as me, just as Taewoo, just as the man who loves you." Lyra could not speak. The emotions inside her were too strong, too overwhelming. So, instead of words, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, the Velaran gesture of deep connection, of souls touching across the space between bodies. And for the first time in her life, she felt complete. The official spoke the bonding words. Vows were exchanged. Rings were placed on fingers, a human tradition that Lyra found charming. And when it was done, when they were officially partners in the eyes of both Valoran law and human custom, the crowd erupted into cheers. Mina was crying and laughing at the same time. Taewoo's parents were holding each other, tears streaming down their faces. Queen Nova was smiling in a way that made her look younger, softer, more human somehow. Even Admiral Kim was wiping her eyes, though she would deny it later. As the celebration began, Lyra and Taewoo stepped away from the crowd. They walked to the edge of the field, where the lights of the party gave way to the darkness of the Korean night. Above them, the stars stretched across the sky like diamonds scattered on black velvet. "Look," Taewoo said, pointing upward. "Do you see that bright star? That is the direction of Valora." Lyra looked. The star was indeed bright, a steady point of light among thousands of others. "It seems so far away," she said. "It is," Taewoo agreed. "But distance does not matter anymore. We have bridges now between worlds, between species, between hearts that once thought they would never find each other." He turned to look at her. "You are my bridge, Lyra. You connected me to something bigger than myself." "And you are mine," Lyra replied. "You showed me that being different is not the same as being broken. You showed me that love can exist even in the darkest places." They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing. The truth about Lyra's bloodline was spreading. Old powers were being questioned. New alliances were forming. Humanity was taking its first steps onto a larger stage, and nothing would ever be the same. But in this moment, none of that mattered. In this moment, there was only the two of them, standing hand in hand under the sky of a beautiful blue planet, surrounded by people who loved them. In this moment, they were home. Years later, their daughter would be born a child with silver blood and her father's stubborn heart. She would grow up in two worlds, loved by humans and Valorans alike. She would carry the hope of both species inside her, proof that different did not mean divided, that love could bridge any gap, that the universe was kinder than it sometimes appeared. But that was the future. For now, on this spring night in Korea, there was only love. And that was enough. It was always enough.